At UFC 317, we saw two champions in Ilia Topuria and Alexandre Pantoja who have the potential to become the GOATs in their weight class. And so I thought it would be interesting to go through every current male UFC champion and kind of just lay out what I think they need to do to become the GOAT in their division. So we're going to start off at lightweight here. Now I'm going to show the, current GOAT of the weight class in comparison to, the current champ, and then talk about what I think they need to get done. So maybe there's some debate between Khabib and Islam. I went with Islam as the current lightweight GOAT, 15 wins in the weight class, 5 title wins, which is the most in UFC history. And then his best wins are against Charles Oliveira, 2 wins against Volkanovski, obviously more geared towards the first one, and then Dustin Poirier. And then for Ilia Topuria, obviously always going to be way behind in the total win number because he built his way up through featherweight, but 2 wins, can't forget the Jai Herbert knockout, 1 title win, and then obviously his best overall win was against Charles Oliveira. Now, what do I think Ilia Topuria needs to do? I think he needs at least 5 more title wins at 155, and I do think because he doesn't have the build-up wins to the title, I think he's going to need to beat Islam Makhachev's title record. So if he got 5, that would put him at 6. That would put him at number 1. Now, obviously, I think the high level, the title wins are more important than just random wins you pick up outside the top 15. But those wins still count for something. Like a Dan Hooker win, although it's not for the title, should still be something on your resume. But I think if he gets 5 more, it would put him at 6, 1 more than Islam Makhachev. But I want to say a legit 5 because, for a guy like Islam, he has 5 title wins, and this is not his fault, by the way, but the resume is a little bit soft based on things outside of his control, right? Like the second Volk win where Volk is short notice, moving up, out of training, that was supposed to be a Charles Oliveira rematch. And then the Renato Moicano matchup, who had no business being in a title fight, that should have been the second Arman matchup. So once again, that is not Islam Makhachev's fault, but if Ilia Topuria could go out there and pick up, 6 overall title wins, all against deserving contenders, in my opinion, that would give him the edge. And so I think the big win that he would still need would be Arman Tsarukyan. I think, even though the UFC seems to be upset with him, I do think he is the next best lightweight. And if we never saw that fight, and Ilia somehow picked up 5 more wins, I don't even know how we'd get there. And then maybe it's a Gaethje, Paddy, Holloway. After those names, who knows, in a few years, the division could be in a completely different place. But I think 5 more wins, you get to 6, you're first in the weight class and title wins, and then you're hoping just all of those are pretty legit, and you don't have weird circumstances like Islam Makhachev did. Then at flyweight for Alexandre Pantoja, if you would have told me a couple of years ago that Pantoja was even sniffing becoming the GOAT of flyweight, I would have told you were crazy. I thought Demetrius Johnson would just be locked in here forever. And I do think he still has a little bit of a lead here, 13 wins, 12 title wins. His best wins are, 2 against Joseph Benavidez, Henry Cejudo, Kyoji Horiguchi, and then 2 wins against John Dodson. Compare that to Pantoja, who's actually beating him out in overall wins with 14, but 7 title wins behind at 5. And then Pantoja's best wins, 3 against Brandon Moreno, if we're counting tough, 2 against Brandon Royval, and then 2 against Kai France, also if we are counting the one from the Ultimate Fighter. And so what does Pantoja need? I'm going to say 3 more title wins, and then I think you can make the case that he would be the GOAT of flyweight. So you're going to have Joshua Van up next, and then maybe you're getting a Manel Kape rematch. I think a Muhammad Mokaev fight for the title would be interesting if the UFC can just not continue to screw up flyweight. That would be helpful because I do think he's arguably the toughest matchup here for Alexandre Pantoja. And at that point, if he gets 3 more title wins, that would put him at 17-3 in the weight class, 8 title wins. And so he'd still be 4 behind DJ. But you have to think quality of competition, I do think it's gotten better. Not every single one of DJ's title defenses are amazing. I do think in general, weight classes with a dominant champion, the defenses become underrated because you don't get the opportunity to beat these former champs because Demetrius was just the champ the entire time. But in pretty much every weight class, the fighters are getting better overall. It's tougher to hold the belt for long periods of time. And you had great fighters and Figgy and Moreno who were still not able to hold the belt for as long as Pantoja has done. So I'm going to go with 3 more wins. And then I think there's a real case to be made if he got to 4, like if he picked up 4 more title wins, almost doubled where he's at right now, I do think that would stamp it for him. Then at bantamweight, might be controversial. I would say that Merab is already the GOAT. 12 wins in the UFC, 3 title wins, super impressive strength of schedule. Petr Yan, Umar Nurmagomedov, Sean O'Malley twice, Henry Cejudo, Jose Aldo. Now, you can make the case that like Cruz has more overall title defenses or title wins when you look at the UFC and the WEC. I just think when you're comparing quality of competition, Merab really just does have him beat. And like, he had a pretty tough road to get to the belt. Like beating Aldo and Yan before, and Cejudo, like before you even get a shot at the title is crazy. And so I do think Merab's the GOAT. I don't think he has to do anything else at this point. I guess maybe just not go on like a super long losing streak to end his career. And then at featherweight, I also think that Volkanovski is already the GOAT. 12 wins in the UFC, 7 title wins. His best wins are 3 against Max Holloway, Jose Aldo, Brian Ortega, and Yair Rodriguez. Those 3 max wins are truly like elite on his resume, especially like the first one was super impressive. That third one was just a complete masterclass from Alexander Volkanovski. Now a weight class where I think there's a pretty significant gap. We have welterweight. So the current GOAT, GSP, 19 wins at welterweight, 12 title wins. His best wins are against Matt Hughes, 2 of them, BJ Penn, also 2 of them, Carlos Condit, and then Nick Diaz. And then the current champion, Jack Della Maddalena, has 8 wins at 170, 1 title win. His best wins are against Bilal Muhammad and Gilbert Burns. For JDM, I'm going to say he is going to need 7 more title wins. Now, like I talked about with, I think, Flyweight, like it's tougher to hold the belt for a long period of time. There's more depth in these weight classes. So I'm not expecting JDM to have to match GSP's 12 title wins. I just think that would be unreasonable. I do think this is a weight class that has a lot of interesting younger names. You've got like, Islam Makhachev moving up, Sean Brady, Shavkat Rakhmonov, Kamaru Usman, obviously not young, but still in the mix, Ian Gary, Michael Morales. If JDM is going through and beating all these dudes, like his resume is going to look very, very impressive. So if he can get to 8 title wins, I do think that would stamp it. I think 7, you start to have a conversation, especially like if this weight class pans out how I think it will. And like a lot of these dudes are just like really tough, really high level fighters. But overall, I do think GSP's overall resume is kind of slept on because you look at the former champs, he was able to fight in Matt Hughes and BJ Penn, beat both those guys twice. No one else was really able to build up that resume because he was the champ. Once someone got the opportunity to be the interim in Carlos Condit, he picked up that win. So I'll say 7 more title wins stamps it for JDM. That would put him at 8 title wins compared to GSP's 12, but overall tougher era to, hold the belt and overall just better competition. Now looking at middleweight, I don't really know if we have a consensus GOAT here. You obviously have Anderson Silva and Israel Adesanya. Silva's going to have Izzy beat in terms of the title defenses. Like he has 14 wins in the weight class, 11 title wins, wins against Vitor Belfort, Dan Henderson, Rich Franklin, Chael Sonnen. Izzy doesn't quite have the same volume, 13 wins, 8 title wins, but better competition, 2 wins against Robert Whittaker, Alex Pereira, Yoel Romero. Now, I do think relative to other weight classes, the gap between Silva's resume and Izzy's isn't that extreme. Like, you can certainly nitpick some of Silva's title wins, but you look at Izzy too, and like Jared Cannonier, Marvin Vettori, those are not super like high level title challengers. Even like Apollo Costa, I know he like looked good going into that title fight, but like since then has not lived up to it. So I probably still slightly prefer Silva. Maybe the, popping for steroids could put Izzy ahead, but those are the 2 guys in the conversation, right? For Dricus du Plessis, he is 9-0 with 3 title wins. His best wins are against Robert Whittaker, Israel Adesanya, and then 2 wins against Sean Strickland. For DDP, I'm going to say he needs 4 more title wins. And this would have to include a Khamzat Chimaev win. So like if he loses to Khamzat just retires or moves up, whatever, like then this would change. This is assuming he goes out, beats Khamzat. I think that would be the best win on his resume. But then you're looking at some of the up-and-coming guys, Nasruddin Imavov, Kyle Bohalio. I think both those guys are like legit tests, would be legit title challengers. And so I think if he could get 4 more, I think his resume would probably be better than Izzy's. First off, I think he had a little bit of a tougher run to get to the belt. Like that Robert Whittaker win, people forget. Whittaker was on a roll, like People thought he was just going to walk into another title shot, and DDP just completely shut him down. And so if he wins 4 more, he would have 1 less title win, but I do think the overall level of competition would be better. Now, you're obviously hoping that, like, if he beats Hamzat and then beats the winner of Imavov and Bohalio, you'd be hoping there'd be someone who steps up as like a legit contender, and you're not getting like those Vettori, Cannonier title defenses. But as of right now, I will say 4 title wins from DDP. Then at light heavyweight, potentially the largest gap, maybe second largest behind welterweight, we have Jon Jones compared to Magomed Ankalaev. Jon Jones, 20 wins, 14 title wins. Daniel Cormier once, not twice because of the positive steroid test. Gustafsson twice. Glover Teixeira, Shogun Hua, and then Rampage Jackson for his best wins. Magomed Ankalaev, 12 wins in the weight class is pretty impressive. Shows how, I guess, long that path was to get to the title shot. 1 title win. His best wins are against Alex Pereira and Alexander Rakic. I think light heavyweight is a really interesting example and like a rare example of a weight class that has potentially gotten worse over time. Like, this is just not a super deep weight class. I think you can say the same thing about heavyweight. I'm going to say that Magomed needs 8 more title wins. Now, this would obviously be like excluding the division magically gaining a ton of young studs and like being really strong again. But if the overall like strength of this weight class remains relatively the same, then I'm going to say 8 more wins. So I think within that, you would need a second Alex win, which like that fight should certainly happen. Then if he can get into like the Yuri Prohashkas, the Khalil Roundtrees, maybe like an Olberg, an Azamat Murzakanov, guys like that, maybe Zhang Min Yang kind of builds himself up, then I think the resume becomes a little bit more interesting. And then also if he doesn't pop for steroids, like I'm willing to give someone a little bit of a lower bar if they're not cheating the sport and testing positive for steroids, which Jon Jones did. So if he picks up 8 more title wins, gets to 9 total, you compare like a new era, 9 title wins compared to a Jon Jones steroid 14. I think some people would still take Jon Jones, but I think Magomed certainly enters the conversation, and you can make the case for him at that point. Obviously feels like a very, very long way away. 8 title wins is a lot. And then in the final weight class here, we have heavyweight, the current GOAT, Stipe Miocic, 14 wins in the weight class, 6 title wins. Super, super impressive strength of schedule. 2 wins against Daniel Cormier, Francis Ngannou, Junior Dos Santos, Fabricio Verdum, Alistair Overeem. The current champion in Tom Aspinall, 8 wins overall, 2 title wins. Yes, I'm counting those both as title wins because those are the fights that the champion would have been fighting. Like Sergey was the rightful contender when Tom beat him for the interim belt, and then Curtis Blaydes would have been fighting for the title if they weren't holding up the weight class with Jon Jones and Stipe. Best wins, those Sergey and Blaydes ones, and then the Alexander Volkov win, which honestly might be aging the best. I think a lot of people thought he did beat Cyril Gane. This is the rare example where I actually think the dude in like the modern era might actually have to outperform the numbers of the former GOAT or like the current GOAT. I'm going to say that Tom Aspinall needs 7 more title wins. So that would have to put him at 9 in comparison to Stipe's 6, which does seem crazy because typically it should be the opposite way. But man, heavyweight is just so bad right now. Like you look at those names I read off, 2 wins against DC, Ngannou, JDS, Verdum, Overeem. Like that is very, very legit competition that Stipe had to get through. I will say 7 title wins if he doesn't beat Jon Jones or Francis. If Francis comes back to the UFC, if Jon Jones comes out of retirement and fights Tom Aspinall and he picks up those wins, that would change the bar. But assuming we're just looking at like the current heavyweight weight class, like what he beats Cyril Gane, he beats Jailton Almeida, and then you're just like, man, what else is there for him? So I really think you would kind of need to smash Stipe's overall title win record. Kind of unfair, like I guess it's not his fault, but I actually do think he would have to outperform Stipe, which is typically not something you'd be talking about going from like the older era to the new era. But that is going to wrap it up for how I think every current champion can become the GOAT of their weight class. Let me know your thoughts. Do you agree, disagree with all my calls? Let me hear it down below. But thank you all for stopping by, and I'll see you in the next one.